Hello and welcome to the Wisden Cricket Weekly podcast. We have a genuinely historic test result to talk about today, New Zealand's epic victory over India in Bengaluru. We've got a preview of the final Pakistan-England test, an Australian top-order soap opera that's unfolding in public, a well-seasoned New England opening partnership in the one-dayers, and we'll be sizing up how Kagiso Rabada compares to the greats after he reached 300 test wickets in record time. I'm Yas Rana, and with me today are Ben Gardner and Katya Witney. Mark Butcher will be joining us later in the show. A reminder that we've got loads of extra content on the old Patreon. For a £5 a month, you get daily episodes after every day of England international cricket and an extra show a week. It only dawned on me this week that there's a week in December where England are playing both a men's test and a women's test at the same time in very different time zones. So that's something to look forward to. Let's not start with England, but with New Zealand. What a week for them as a cricketing nation, obviously winning the Women's T20 World Cup early in the week. And as a sporting nation as well, I think they won the sailing thing earlier in the week as well. Well, they beat India in Bengaluru, even after securing a 350-run first innings lead. They had to fight really hard. India at one point, 408 for 3 in their second innings. It's just their third ever win in India. They played 37 test matches there, going all the way back to 1955. It's their first win since 1988 in India, when Richard Hadley and John Bracewell bowled them to victory. For India, it's just their fifth home defeat since England beat them 2-1 under Alistair Cook in 2012. Katya, an amazing achievement and a brilliant, extremely watchable test match from start to finish as well.
Yeah, I guess watchable would be the word to describe it. Obviously, a brilliant result from New Zealand, and from that first session where India were bowled out or first session a bit when India were bowled out 46, it was kind of always their test. But I think the extraordinary thing about it was that India looked not just like they could win, but likely to win at certain stages of the game, particularly when Sarfraz and Pant were batting. So if you take it from a New Zealand perspective, not only bowling out for 46, but then breaking that partnership and chasing down the runs in a fairly uneventful chase on the final day, that's kind of a historic kind of thing to do as well. But yeah, from India's last series to this series, they're playing an incredibly watchable brand of cricket that's making, I guess, home test matches in India a lot more watchable than they have been previously, when India have tended to dominate on spinning tracks. In the first innings, when India got bowled out for 46, Rohit Sharma admitted that he completely read the pitch wrong, got the toss wrong, picked too many spinners rather than seamers, and it was New Zealand seamers who did the job on the first morning. But yeah, quite just so many different threads coming out of that test match to pull. And it's good there's another 2 test matches, not just the 2-match series that New Zealand would standardly get in India, for those storylines to play out.
It's quite interesting. Tom Latham said that he would have batted first as well. So a bit of good humility from both captains there, acknowledging that they misread conditions.
Well, the issue with the conditions is actually quite interesting, isn't it? It's because the ground, I think, drains really quickly, has really good drainage conditions. So it rained loads on the first day, but then the outfield gets fine. But I think the pitch itself retained quite a bit of moisture, so that's why there was actually that sweet spot of time to bowl in it. So as you see from New Zealand putting up 400 and then India being 400 for 3, it actually was quite a good batting pitch. And if you did manage to get through the first couple of hours, maybe 2 down, then you could have made hay. But India just didn't do that. And that actually, I think, shows, almost the most remarkable thing in this game. I mean, obviously India being bowled at 46, that is crazy. But actually, it's not just they were, 400 for 3, and then that was a proper collapse as well. And that's almost, in some ways, a more impressive thing to do as a bowling unit, to come back from being in the field for so long. You think this game that you're in charge of is slipping away from you, and then to actually to not just like then plug away, but actually to rip through them a second time is that's almost the thing that you think New Zealand will look at and be like, actually on a flat pitch, when the batters were on top, we were still able to take whatever it was, 7 for 70, and then wrap up victory.
Yeah, I mean, it was basically using the second new ball well. So New Zealand took 54 for 7 with that second new ball to end that India second innings. Before that, I genuinely thought India were going to win the game. They were scoring so quickly. New Zealand was short of ideas. I thought they got a few things slightly wrong in the field. We'll get to Sarfraz Khan in a bit. They just had no idea what to do against him. Pant was playing the way that he normally bats, and India were moving the game along so quickly that the draw was off the table. Had it not rained, I think the rain on day 4 brought the draw into it a little bit more. But without that rain, I genuinely think India were in a position where they could have set New Zealand not just an irritating 4th innings target, but one that's almost unlikely to get on the 5th day.
Genuinely very funny on day 4 as well that you had coming off the field, the umpires had taken them off a bad light, and you had Rohit standing in the middle, refusing to leave the pitch, having an argument, and then a minute later the heavens open and it's catastrophic rain and all the players are running off the field, which is very funny.
Ben, are India slightly more vulnerable than usual? A lot hinged on that toss decision on the first day. As you say, the first day was a washout, and then on the second day both captains would have batted first, and Rohit admitted later that was the wrong decision. How much do you look into this? Is this a weird one-off in that India were blown away by a spectacular first or second morning new ball spell? Or is this speaking to a wider trend here that India still very good at home, but not quite as dominant as they used to be?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a bit of all those things, and it definitely is a bit of a one-off. But the thing is that for so long, India didn't have anything even close to a one-off. I mean, there was a sort of a 3-year stretch leading into the pandemic where they almost didn't lose a second innings wicket pretty much. Like they would just blow teams away, and they blow them away with pace and with spin, and on really good batting tracks they would make 500 and then they bowl teams out for 250 and then do that again. And they are definitely just not quite at that level. I mean, the person hasn't changed loads. I mean, Pujara is one of the guys you look at having slipped away from the side, but it's actually more that some of those guys are just getting on in age a bit. You know, Kohli and Rohit for a time were just so dominant and aren't quite at that same level. And the guys that have come in, obviously they look like they can do it, but you know, that's still 2 guys here and there who aren't just quite at the same level. And actually the same with the bowlers. You have Bumrah, who is obviously just as good as he always is, but you haven't got Shami, you haven't got Ishant Sharma, Umesh Yadav, who are a big part of that home dominance as well, Bhuvneshwar Kumar too. And then even, you know, Ashwin had a poor game, and you are also looking at, you know, there's just a lot of guys who are, you know, in their mid to late 30s in that team. And so actually this was a great test team, and it is, you know, closer to its end than its start. And I guess we've got this big series coming up, the Border Gavaskar Trophy, which will be almost like a...
I'm so excited for that series. So excited. I don't really know which way it's going to go. There's so many variables. Both teams are close to the end of their cycle than the beginning, and given their recent history as well, it'll go such a long way to sort of defining how those teams are remembered. You know, if India can make it 3 wins in 3 touring Australia, and then also this Australia side that's won so much, but to lose 3 consecutive tours at home to India as well, that would be a massive deal. Yeah, I mean, I guess I think it was a one-off, but also I think you're seeing signs of where cracks will appear. So like Ashwin and Jadeja are so crucial to India, right? You know, in Ashwin, you've got a guy who comes in at 8 with 6 test hundreds, and because Jadeja can always bat in the top 7 and Pant can always bat in the top 6, you always have 5 high-class bowling options at home. And because they're both spinners, and because in overseas test spin generally plays a less prevalent role, you can't have that same balance that makes them so difficult to beat in Indian conditions.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, their last home defeat to a non-Big 3 side in test was 14 years ago. so even a one-off is like still worth being like, oh, okay, that's happened.
Yeah, and also like for a lot of their history, they weren't that good, and New Zealand still couldn't beat them. On India, their star player was Sarfraz Khan, who England fans might remember from the series earlier in the year. I absolutely love watching him play. Amazing first-class record, literally averages 70. Has had to fight really hard to get into this India team. He's very fun to watch. He's an attacking player with an unconventional technique. He scored 150 to keep India in the fight. He has 103 50s from his first 4 test matches, and despite that record and despite that amazing first-class record, he only played this test match because Shubman Gill was nursing a neck injury. With everyone fit, Katya, will he play in Australia despite that amazing record?
Well, it looks quite hard if Shubman Gill comes back and goes into the openers, back into number 3, and Kohli goes back down, and you'd think that they wouldn't want Kohli batting at number 3 again, because they pushed him up for this test, but in the first innings it obviously didn't go well, and Kohli doesn't have a particularly great record at 3, hadn't done it for something like 7 years before this test, so then that means you've got one lesser spot in the middle order. So the only way he could really play would be if KR Rahul was dropped. And that could happen. Rahul hasn't had a massively great recent record. He's a lot older now. And if India are looking to regenerate that side, you just said that, Kohli and Rohit are getting on and they need to bring that next generation of players through, then Sarfaraz would be the smart option to make sure he's in the 11 for Australia. For me, he should be in the 11 all the time. I don't understand why they can't put him in the 11 all the time, because he's so clearly so impressive. Watching him in the England series earlier in the year, it was so impressive the way he plays, so combative, so different to a lot of the India players, and it gives them that kind of variety to have someone aside from Pant who can really set up that kind of final innings chase. And watching them back together, it was just so fun. And I think, was it Adya of Wisden India who did an interview with either Sarfaraz or his brother last year or something, where they said, his 100 starts at 100. He gets big hundreds. He doesn't stop at 100, and he's known for getting big hundreds. So yeah, I think he should be in the side all the time.
Yeah, so I watched a fair bit of this knock because my body was still in Pakistan mode. So I woke up at 4:30 in the morning on Saturday, very annoyed, struggling to get back to sleep. And then I realised, oh, hang on, the test starts in 15 minutes. So I got out of my bed, went downstairs and watched it. Brilliant first session. I do get why India are reluctant to pick him overseas, because the thing he remind me of is in 2020, Pakistan played in England and they had Fawad Alam in their side, who had this ridiculous first-class record, like not quite Sarfaraz levels, but he was quite a lot older than Sarfaraz. I think he would have been 33-ish, maybe older, averaged 57 in first-class cricket, so much better first-class record than any other Pakistan player. And for years, I'd look at scorecards, look at Qadi Azam first-class records, and wonder, why is this guy not on the side? And then I watched him for one ball and was like, that's why. His technique was really weird, which puts you off. And Sarfaraz has an element to that with Sarfaraz. So in his 150, he scored 7 runs in the V. 58 runs were behind square on the offside alone. And he's really good at anything short and outside his eye line. He basically looks to dab or ramp or cut behind square. And New Zealand thought that they could get him out this way because he just kept taking the shot on even when they packed that area of the field. But he kept finding gaps. And he's fallen very quickly to the new ball in both innings. I just don't think we know how good he is against good seam bowling when they bowl normally to him. And I think because he has quite a weird technique, that question will hang over him more than it will other players.
Yeah, and that's also what works in KR Rahul's favour, is that he is kind of an oddity among Indian players, and I think he's stronger against pace and against spin. And there you can go through his record and find, instances of him playing really high-class innings against high-class pace in those conditions. Like even, go back to the end of last year, I think the Boxing Day test against Africa, they lost that game, but he made a brilliant 100 in that game. And also, one of the things with Indian selection more than basically other countries is just how, mostly to their credit, I think they have a very established hierarchy in terms of how hard it is to fight your way in, how hard it is to play your way out. And so this is the kind of thing that could change it. Sarfaraz making 150 KR Rahul, not having the same impact. But equally, I think that they might just look at it and think, actually, who is our best bet to score runs? And we still think it's this guy because we used to think that. And they kind of might be fair enough, I think. Like, I could see KR Rahul having an impact in that Border Gavaskar Trophy series.
Yeah, so do I. But I think Sarfaraz has probably got to a point where, even though it looks weird, he deserves a go, just because of how many runs he scores at home. Ben, India and Australia once again favourites to qualify for the World Test Championship final next year. What's the most likely way of it not being both of them?
As in, for it to be neither of them,
or just not India Australia? Well,
they are favourites for sure, but I think this might just be quietly the best World Test Championship we've ever had.
Wow.
Yeah. In that Sri Lanka and South Africa are still very much in it, and to the extent where, South Africa pretty much have destiny in their hands. So they playing Bangladesh at the moment, going to win that first test almost certainly. Have one more test in that series and have 2 series at home against Sri Lanka and Pakistan. They've had a very friendly cycle in terms of playing. And
we were saying earlier that Pakistan, even though they've turned a corner, the way in which they've turned that corner probably makes them less likely to win in South Africa.
Well, you'd hope they're not going to pick just Amir Jamal as their sole team then, but you can't count anything out. But so let's see what I've got here. So I've got I think which is a realistic way that Sri Lanka and South Africa make the final Australia don't. So South Africa win.
So sorry, Sri Lanka or South Africa rather than Sri Lanka and South Africa.
This would be the way that both of them could, and it's realistic-ish. So this is India beating New Zealand 2-1, winning the next two tests.
I don't think the word "ish" works after realistic. But
Okay.
go on, yeah.
So India beat New Zealand 2-1 with the next two tests, but lose 4-1 in Australia. South Africa beat Bangladesh 2-0, draw 1-1 with Sri Lanka, and beat Pakistan 2-0. And then Australia come a cropper against the spinners in Sri Lanka and lose that 2-0. That would see a Sri Lanka-South Africa final. Yeah. So
that's not totally ridiculous, especially given Australia's not great record in Asia.
Exactly, yeah. And actually, Australia, the ones, so that they could even sort of, that they could win a couple tests and still, if South Africa go and blow those 5 teams away, which again, South Africa a bit up and down. Hard to say that exactly. Sri Lanka's last series in South Africa, lest we forget, was a 2-0 series win. But yeah, I think it's been really, really exciting.
So we want South Africa to beat Bangladesh 2-0, beat Pakistan 2-0, and then whatever happens in that South Africa Sri Lanka series, well, someone's got to get some points. So
yeah. Exactly. And actually, either South Africa will have got so many points that Australia will need something in Sri Lanka, or Sri Lanka will have got so many points that if Sri Lanka gets something against Australia, they might go ahead of one of the two. So actually, I think it's not so unlikely that we're at least looking at the last few games of the World Championship and being like, there is still quite a lot riding on this.
That's brilliant. That is it for part 1. In part 2, Mark Butcher will begin our preview of the third Pakistan-England test match. Two changes to the England 11 for the third test. Gus Atkinson and Rehan Ahmed are in. Matt Potts and Bryden Castle are out. Butch, Rehan Ahmed in for the third test of a series in Pakistan. We're in exactly the same place as we were 2 years ago. His trajectory as a test cricketer, as an international cricketer, might not have been as smooth as we might have predicted 2 years ago after he sensationally took that 5-foot on debut at Karachi. Do you think we should manage our expectations with Rehan a little bit? Just, it is so rare for a young leg spinner to have instant success in international cricket.
Yeah, I mean, you know, he's had a difficult enough time of it playing for Leicestershire over the course of last summer. 8 games, only took a handful of wickets, 13 wickets or so. And yeah, I guess the frustration might be that he hasn't perhaps come on in noticeable ways in the last couple of years. But that isn't to say that he hasn't sort of learnt plenty in that time away. And given that, you know, his role is likely to be like this, you know, i.e. it's a kind of an SOS call when conditions are very extreme in terms of spin, that he's more likely to play than as a sort of a frontline pick. I don't think we should be too concerned about it. Very, very young still. He's got a hell of a lot to learn. Leg spin is incredibly difficult as an art, and many players before him, even the sort of, you know, Adil Rashid, as great a bowler as he's become, it took them a very long time to get to a place where they were sort of like first picks, or guys that you would have on the team sheet in either short form or long form games, above and beyond the sort of the more traditional finger spinner that is easier to kind of, I say easier, it's more likely that you're going to be more consistent as a finger spinner at a younger age than you are as a leg spinner.
Another personnel point, Jordan Cox is not going to play the third test of the series, but he's likely to play at least 2 tests, perhaps even 3 tests on the upcoming tour of New Zealand. It feels after years of Folkes versus Bairstow versus Butler chat, we've moved on very, very quickly. Jamie Smith out and for the birth of his first child, and Jordan Cox in. A lot of people listening to this wouldn't have seen a lot of Jordan Cox.
Yeah.
What should we expect from Jordan Cox as a test cricketer?
Well, he's another incredibly talented young player. You know, has a lot of time, really good sharp footwork. Has all the sort of the modern players' tricks and the weight of shot. But also is supremely confident as well. I think as a human being, I think in much the way that I think people were a little bit surprised by Jamie Smith and his sort of self-confidence and his ability to kind of project that playing. Jordan Cox has that in spades as well. I find it, I guess this is just my generation, I suppose, but having just got into the test match side, I know it's the birth of your first child and everything, but I would not be giving up my spot for anybody if I was Jamie Smith. But that, you know, that's just the way things are in the modern game, and you know, Jamie Smith probably feels and has probably been assured that the likelihood is that whatever happens with Jordan Cox, he's going to be the number 1 pick. But my goodness me, giving plenty of people chances to nick your spot is not something that was not something you'd give up lightly back in the old days.
Work-life balance, Butch.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
I guess the other thing about Jordan Cox's elevation, he had an amazing season for Essex in the Championship, so that's worth pointing out. Similarly good to Jamie Smith's with Surrey, but I guess what people will say is he's only kept in 6 first-class games. Do you think the current regime is perhaps a little, Ben Folkes on one side, one of the best keepers in the world, to a guy who's barely done it in first-class cricket? Are England a bit casual in terms of, the expectations of what a wicketkeeper does?
No, I doubt that. I think they kind of weigh it up around what they're going to get, what the likelihood of catastrophic keeping errors are going to be versus what the upside of a player in the batting order that can score runs either at a rate or with the tail in a way that somebody like Ben Folkes does not have the ability to do. And I think that's always the calculation. And when it's come to Jamie Smith, you barely noticed the difference, did you, between Folkes and Smith? He's hardly put a foot wrong in the Test cricket that he's played so far. So competent has he been with the glove. So, England will hope that Cox has a very similar introduction into it, and that you're not noticing his wicket keeping because it's competent to a level whereby you're not having any massive mistakes, and that he's performing with the bat in a way that will win you games or help to win you Test matches. That for them, I think, is always going to be the balance.
A day out from the third Test match, it looks like Pakistan are going to try and produce a pitch similar to the one that we saw in the second Test at Multan. Obviously, the Rawalpindi pitch hasn't been used, so there's no guarantee that it's going to be as extreme as what we saw on the final day in Multan. But hypothetically, if it is similar to what we saw in the second innings in Multan in particular, do you think England will try and do anything differently with the bat? Just as a reminder, England lost their final 8 wickets in something like 20 overs. They basically swept at everything in a way that was very different to how Pakistan played. Conditions were difficult for Pakistan in their second innings, but Pakistan were able to go through some periods where I guess there was less chaos as there was when England batted. Yeah,
I mean, I hope that England have reflected on that over the last couple of days, and perhaps thought to themselves that they sold themselves a little short with the way they went about it in that final innings. Yes, there was turn, and yes, there were likely to be unplayable deliveries in there, but I think they gave it away, really. Particularly when you look at sort of like the skill and the talent that there is in that batting lineup, to basically say the only way we're going to do to get anywhere near this or to make the game viable is if we sweep every ball of every over, is sort of selling your skill and your ability to kind of to manage a situation a little bit better than that very, very short. So I hope that they'll have reflected upon that and realised that there's a balance to be struck between, yes, putting a bit of pressure back on the bowler so he can't just run up and land it in the same place, but also knowing that that defending for little periods of time, putting a little bit of pressure back on a Pakistan team who have been very unused to winning in recent times, might well have got them that break that constant sweeping did not get them, if you see what I mean. You have to sort of go with, like a tide going in and out. The periods where you're going to attack and periods where you just have to soak it up a little bit. And they're definitely good enough to do that. And they're far too good a batting lineup to bat the way that they did in that last innings, I think.
I think England are much less one-dimensional than their critics say they are. But do you think, with the younger generation of players, not just with England, but more generally in the Test game, that players almost hide behind the sort of the mantra of this is how we play or this is how we're going to play, and there's less figuring it out on the job? There are stats around the number of collapses in Test cricket now that they're much more prevalent than they were 15 years ago. For example, Joe did a really interesting interview with Dan Milan last week where Milan wondered whether young players are hiding behind the, this is how we play mantra a little bit. Do you think that comes into it at all?
But I mean, possibly. I mean, one of the things, I suppose, if you go back to the sort of like the entrance of short form cricket, of T20 cricket, and the sort of the abdication of responsibility for your wicket or for your dismissal that came in because of the shortness of the game, I think we've seen that sort of creep into to Test matches a little bit. But I wouldn't. I don't think I would level that at this England team. I think in that last innings they made a decision, a sort of collective decision about the conditions and the best way that they might go about chasing 290. And I think they got it wrong. I think that yes, they were going to have to take some risk for sure, but getting there wasn't going to be about taking risk all of the time. And they didn't I don't think they factored in the fact that they're a lot better players than just going out there and having a slog. And they might have got closer, or at least they might have caused Pakistan some cause to panic had they backed themselves a little bit more to see out sticky periods of time.
Should be a fascinating third test match. Who knows what the Rawalpindi pitch will produce. Cheers for your time, Butch. Catch you next week. Pakistan are unchanged, both in terms of their 11, but also how we expect the pitch to play. Harry Brook was saying the other day that the pitch has been raked. England clearly think that there'll be turn. Katya, how important is this test for England? Because on the one hand, the second test match was probably the most blameless England have been in defeat under Stokes, in terms of the toss was so important. Conditions were so extreme towards the end. But also, it's possibly England's last test match in Asia under Stokes. They don't play there again until they tour Bangladesh in 2.5 years' time.
It has some importance. I don't think we should overstate the importance. I think if England were to win it, Stokes's record as a captain in Pakistan would be like completely unchallenged, basically. And it would also give him a more favourable record in Asia than 2 series losses, one in India and one in Pakistan kind of looks. You also got to point to the Hyderabad test as well and point to that as his record in Asia. So it's important in terms of that. I don't particularly think Stokes cares about that. And then you've also got to think about one series win in Pakistan in 2022 was extreme enough, but 2 wins in a row in Pakistan for an England team is completely unheard of. I think it matters more in terms of how they lose it. I still think you could point to obviously some of their batting in the second innings and go, well, this is a common theme over the last year and a half now. So that's potentially important, but it looks like it is potentially going to spin. Pakistan have gone with the same 11. England getting bowled out to spin in an Asian country is not particularly a new thing, so I'm not sure how much it matters. I think it would be nice in many ways to win it, but if they lose it, I don't think it's a kind of devastating, the winter's been written off kind of scenario. I do think, given how much chaos Pakistan have been in, to come out of the series and having not won it is a missed opportunity. But yeah, we'll have to see, I guess.
Ben, how do you see it?
Yeah, broadly similar. I guess it also depends a lot on the toss. If England were to win the toss, bat first and lose the game, that would be a much more significant black mark against them. And I guess we also don't actually know how the pitch is going to play. We've seen the rate marks, but we also know how Pakistan have struggled to get pitches to do what they want them to do, and this is still Rawalpindi.
And we know what happened last time.
Yeah, exactly. So Kash is completely right that this legacy stuff just matters so much more for us chatting on a podcast than it does for Stokes. Stokes they'll really want to win the game. They'll really want to win the series, but they won't be thinking like, oh, if we don't win this, then will people look back in 10 years' time at my captaincy and say I wasn't as good in Asia as I could have been? That's not the way that they'll think about it. And then also, in terms of approaching the Ashes, it's which they've said is the thing that they are most focused on, like win or lose.
These conditions are so different.
Exactly. But any series win is just a valuable thing, and England are good at picking them up overseas, better than people give them credit for. And this is also, it's a test under pressure. Like, actually, they haven't played loads of deciders under Stokes and McCullum. I think this is the first since the South Africa series in the first summer.
I think they're sleeping pretty well, though.
Yes, yeah, no, yeah. But I mean that their last day of practice, they're just having a 6-sitting session, aren't they? So they're doing okay. But yeah, there's definitely some interest there, but also I think there's a tendency to sort of looking at a bit simplicity to say that England have won in Asia on flat tracks and lost on spinning tracks, which, as Katya points out, overlooks the Hyderabad test and also overlooks to an extent the last 2 tests in Pakistan last time out, which weren't
as high scoring as people say that they were.
Exactly, yeah. So
2 tests into the series, Jack Leach has once again emerged as a really central figure to what England are trying to do in Asia. 14 wickets at 26.5 so far, and when you factor in how flat it was for the first test match, that is very impressive indeed. Katya, just on a human level, the resilience he's shown to keep bouncing back after each setback he's had is probably too easily overlooked, because he's had to endure so much across his time, not just as a England cricketer, but as a professional cricketer.
Yeah, I think we shouldn't limit this conversation to just the last 12 months. Like, since pre-COVID, Leach has been consistently either getting ill or getting injured, having to spend periods on the timeline of recuperation. Also has Crohn's disease as well, so that's an ongoing kind of thing that he has to deal with. And he's always come back every time and fought his way back into the conversation to be in the 11 in all conditions. I think it's unfortunate for him that he did get injured in India when they had those 3 young spinners who had nothing to lose when they were picked. And Shah Bashir came and took that position. I also think his age is kind of playing a factor now in why England are looking to Shah Bashir across all conditions, whereas Leach has almost been picked as the second spinner. But I do think that in any other era, Leach would have played far more tests than he has done. Stokes and McCullum value this kind of high ceiling value cricketer like Bashir, who's not the finished article, and who is not the best spinner in England. And Leach doesn't have that because he's in his early mid-30s. He's got a very clearly defined ceiling angle, even if that ceiling at the minute is higher than what Bashir can produce. And that really hasn't worked in his favour. There was a story about Stokes calling Leach up over the summer and McCullum calling Leach up over the summer that came out this week. And I think that kind of shows how much they do value Leach as a player and as a person to have around that group. And it also points to something that I think is overlooked with Stokes a lot of the time. It's not just his on-field stuff. It's not just how he is in training and in the dressing room. But as a manager of people, he's incredibly good. And he's made himself not just someone that, like for Leach, he actively wants to be in that environment. He actively wants to perform for Stokes and for that side, and that's something that's incredibly overlooked. It's kind of a bittersweet tour for Leach because he's done a really good job, but I also don't think it changes his standing, as he probably won't be going to New Zealand, and he probably is now the second choice spinner, and that's how his career will kind of continue.
Yeah, I think for me, I've been more sort of taken by Leach's human reaction to what's happened in the last year than I am by like my how I view Leach as a bowler hasn't changed on this trip. I think he's done really well. He's almost gone back to basics. He has done what Jack Leach does really well. I think there have been times where Pakistan have taken the attack to him and you sort of remembered why England aren't all in on Leach, and it's not just Stokes and McCullum who have made this decision. Leach was left out the side in 2020 for Don Bess. There was a home summer in 2021, I think, where he just wasn't picked at all, and then was thrown straight into the cauldron for the first test in Brisbane. He's never quite won total trust of whoever the England coach and captain has been in all conditions. But I think to bounce back from being left out, it must have been a pretty brutal call to have taken. For him to lose his spot to his Somerset teammate who's just making his way at Taunton. But I think in Asia, Ben, his record's amazing over a really long period of time, and not just statistically for his own bowling record, but in terms of what he's contributed towards.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the amount of games he's won in Asia, as in test wins he's played a part of, whether he's been a match winning part of them or not, that tells its own story, I think. I mean, and also if you look at his record, England's record without him in the side and with him in the side, there is a stark difference there. But he's now won 11 tests in Asia. I think only Joe Root for England has won more, and that's more than like
whatever.
Yeah, and that's more than like some really good Asian players have won. It's the same number as Rishabh Pant's won in Asia. It's more than Bishan Bedi ever won in Asia. So yeah, that is astonishing. I think one of the things with Leach as well is because he's he's a cult hero cricketer, in some ways almost like a comedy character at times, in a way that he plays up to, right? Like he calls himself the nut and doesn't mind being called the nut. He lets people shine the ball on his head, does his thing with his spectacles between deliveries. He really enjoyed the limelight of that one not out. But I think because of all of that, it does kind of mask the steeliness that goes into to also further back in his career. He wasn't marked out to be a professional cricketer for quite a long time. He was working in a supermarket before he kind of finally gets his way into the game. Like he's kind of had to battle all the way through, and I guess that also probably feeds into what we're seeing now. Whereas other guys in his position would be thinking along the lines of what Katya is saying, of like, oh, how do I get my place back long term? What does this mean? And then that can work negatively, where it's like, well, I don't really have a way to do that, so am I going to sort of lose a bit of motivation? I think Leach is he just values every game he gets to play and thinks like, I'm going to be part of winning a test match or winning a series for England. I'm just going to just really enjoy that and do my best. And that's obviously the best way to approach it, but it's much easier said than done when you're in his sort of position, and does speak very highly of him.
Yeah, and I think irrespective of whether or not he's first or second choice, I think we need to appreciate that England's ability to compete in Asia has been possible because they have someone as reliable as him. He might not be peak Swan, but he's been able to produce the goods consistently over quite a long time in Asia and in a very reliable way. A couple of stats on that. So Jimmy Anderson is the only English bowler with more test wickets in Asia, and globally, among overseas bowlers in Asia, he's right up there in the all-time list. So top of that list is Lyon with 140 wickets at 30, Warne 127 wickets at 26, then Vittori 98 wickets at 29, Anderson 92 wickets at 27, Steyn 92 wickets at 24, and then Leach 77 wickets at 31, and he'll get an opportunity to close that gap to Anderson and Steyn in the third test match. Other England spinner news, Shoaib Bashir is set to tour Australia with the England Lions in early 2025 to continue his development. That tour, the head coach is Andrew Flintoff, and it's been reported by Cricinfo that Dale Steyn will be part of the coaching group on that tour. I think England have 10 young fast bowlers in that group, so that's obviously quite a good person to learn from. On Pakistan, it is now confirmed that Jason Gillespie, their head coach, no longer has anything to do with selection. Asked by the press today, he said, "I'm not a selector, I'm a match day strategist as head coach. I'm all about the players. My focus is on the players. I'll let the selectors do their job and we'll go out there and play the best cricket we can possibly play. I'm getting splinters on my arse from sitting on the fence here." I'm not a body language expert, but Gillespie didn't look overly thrilled about the role change, so I looked into what he might have said about the role previously. As recently as April this year, speaking about how he'd combine the role of head coach and selector, he said, "I'm excited about being part of the selection committee. In my whole coaching career, I've always had the role as a selector. It all comes down to clarity and communication. I'm looking forward to working with everyone on the selection panel as well as the captain. I feel good and we'll forge a strong bond, strong relationship and go from there." But again, communication and clarity of thought are key. That's not quite happened, but it's gone all right for them in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not how Gillespie's seen it, and obviously I think there's probably quite a lot of subtext to what he's saying about, looking around at what's going on in Pakistan and thinking like, kind of what have I got myself into here? But equally, is Gillespie watching, every ball of the Champions Cup, or is he going to be able to watch the Kyrgyzstan Trophy when Pakistan are playing Test series elsewhere? And actually, when you've got a guy like him, who is there value in just giving him a set of players and saying, make these guys as good as they can be and forget about the other stuff? Maybe. I mean, he doesn't seem too happy with it, but as you say, it's gone pretty well. I mean, I went back and watched, after we discussed it on the last podcast, the highlights video of the selection meeting. It is so funny. You do see Sarfraz appear just on Zoom there. It's great. And then get left out of the squad.
Yeah.
11 guys in that room, like all basically the big dogs of Pakistan cricket you can think of, just sitting around. And obviously Alim Dar there as well. And not Jason Gillespie.
The biggest dog in Pakistan cricket. Anyway, that's it for part 2. In part 3, we'll talk about England's new well-seasoned opening partnership, Kagiso Rabada and David Warner's possible return to Test cricket. So Josh Buttler is out of England's ODI series against West Indies. That, by the way, starts next week. He's expected to be fit for the T20s. Michael Pepper has been called up in his stead, and he is, given the makeup of that squad, relatively likely to open the batting with Phil Salt, which has excited a lot of people.
This is why you keep saying well seasoned, Jazz, despite hating people calling it well seasoned. But you're a sucker for a pun, I guess.
Well, my point being that if someone brought you a plate of chicken and it was seasoned just with salt and pepper and said that's well seasoned, you'd be really disappointed. Anyway, Liam Livingstone, who wasn't even in England's ODI squad for the Australia ODIs, will captain England in the ODIs. When I saw that come through, Ben, I did think, geez.
You thought, geez, did you? Yeah.
I don't think I was alone in that. Katya, who is Michael Pepper? Why have England picked him?
Michael Pepper is a opener who plays for Essex. hadn't really done anything until around about 2021, which is when people started to get excited about him. I think more to the fact that his name is Pepper and Phil Salt is Phil Salt.
So genuinely, do you think if he was called Michael Smith, he'd be selected right now?
He'd be playing darts. Yeah.
I think there's a case to be made that he's grabbed more headlines because people like puns than he would have if his name didn't lend itself to a pun.
So the key point here is he's not as young as people might assume he is. So 2021, he was young, but he wasn't a total novice.
Yeah, so he's about 26 now. So that makes him 23 in 2021, which is older than England select a lot of their debutants. And he did pretty well in the T20 Blast, and off the back of that started getting some franchise gigs in what's the one in the UAE? ILT20, that's it. And a couple of other ones. And then he got picked in the 100, has never done particularly well in the 100, but continued doing really well for Essex in the T20 Blast. This year he scored 200s in pretty quick succession in the T20 Blast. Really good hitter into the leg side, really effective against spin. What was interesting for me about his selection though was that England felt he's a keeper, and England felt the need to select a keeper.
I think they picked him for his batting.
Well, that's my thing.
Yeah.
The point is that means that he is reckoned among the best, 20, given who England don't have available for this series, batters in England, irrespective of his keeping, because you'd expect Salt to keep, which I think is potentially, for my liking anyway, questionable as to him being in the top 20 batters in England at this point. But yeah, it was kind of an out of blue selection. I don't think any of us really saw that coming, right?
No, I don't think so. I mean, this squad's a real, a real victory for the county fans who, say the ECB don't watch it, because this and Jaffa Jahan, two guys.
These
one
are
guy's
proper blast selections, right?
Yeah,
This is not really on anything they've done in the 100.
Yeah, and my kind of theory with Pepper, I think you've seen this actually a little bit with the England management in general, because Rob Key does just everything. Like, he just makes decisions are based on kind of what he thinks. There's he'll do a bit of consultation, but a lot of it will be like, I think this is the guy, so I'm picking this guy. That has, I think, by and large, worked decently for England. But I think also it means that when attention is in one place, and this mainly goes for white ball cricket, just gets forgotten about for bits of time. So you had this with Matthew Mott just being kept. He was just in the role for a month after the World Cup, because England were just playing a test series and Rob Key just hadn't got around to thinking about it. And when he gets around to thinking about it, he was like, oh yeah, he's going, so I'm getting him in. And obviously right now, England are playing this series in Pakistan. So actually it's kind of Butler's not going to be able to make the ODIs, go picking a guy, and it's he kind of just, I kind of think has loads of thought definitely gone into this. As Kash said, you could have picked just who you think the next best batter is. This is also a real development tool, so you could just pick who you think a really exciting young player is.
This is the thing, it's sort of in the middle, right? Yeah. So they've obviously moved past a whole generation of players who aren't even that old, right? So an older name would be the James Vince, for example. They've overlooked James Vince. They haven't gone back to him.
Johnny Bairstow's still contracted.
Johnny Bairstow's still contracted for another 11 months. He's not in. But even younger players, right? So at the moment, Pepper is only in the ODI squad. He's not in the T20 squad. He's just in the ODI squad as cover for Butler. They could have gone to someone who played ODI cricket last year in Sam Hain, who's still in his 20s, who could be a medium-term Dawid Malan style bolter in the 50-over setup. They haven't gone down that route. But they also haven't gone down the route of what they have genuinely done in all formats, is look at someone who's got a really high ceiling, someone who's young, and the early signs are this could be someone really special. Pepper averages 11 in the 100 from 3 seasons. It's a poor record, and that's supposed to be our premier white ball domestic competition. And even if you look at he's played a couple of extraordinary knocks in the Blast, but all of his best knocks have been on very small grounds, unlike grounds that you generally come across in international cricket. I thought someone like Matt Hurst at Lancashire would get picked, 20-year-old keeper, who did really good things in the 100, actually done really good things in all formats for both Lancashire and Manchester Originals. But yeah, we're literally arguing about the reserve batter on a tour where most of the players aren't available. So but perhaps still, we should move on.
Yeah, but still listen to those Patreon dailies. That'll be good stuff. Yeah.
Saqib Mahmood, by the way, who's on that tour, has signed a 3-year white ball contract with Lancashire with the option of playing red ball as well. So that's a good news story for Lancashire, who have not had many good news stories recently. In Bangladesh, South Africa are on top in the first test match. They should wrap up victory tomorrow, but you never know. A Carl Verena 100 has put them in a good position, as have 7 wickets so far for not many runs from Kagiso Rabada, who became the fastest to 300 test wickets in terms of number of balls bowled, which I think is probably the purest measure of who's got there fastest. Ben, how does Rabada compare with the greats?
Statistically, in terms of how quickly he takes wickets, he is the best of all time. So he takes a wicket every 39 balls he bowls in Test cricket. No one else, even with 200 wickets, beats that. Dale Stein's the next on the list. He is a ridiculously good strike bowler, and I think actually is a guy who, partly because South Africa don't play as much Test cricket as they did at one time, and partly as well because sometimes I think maybe because he bowls such good wicket taking balls, he's been able to kind of keep that record decent even when you can see he's clearly not at his best. Like when he's at his best, he is completely irresistible.
That spell against India last winter was like incredible.
Yeah,
like, genuinely incredible.
Yeah, so when he's at his best, there's nothing you can do as a batter. But also because he's so attacking, maybe you kind of feel that he's not like exerting this kind of like this masterful control. He's just trying to take your wicket all the time. And sometimes when he's like not quite at his best, he'll still be sort of picking up these wickets, but it's like the runs are flowing at the same time kind of thing. But like that's the only reason why why he might slip under the radar slightly when we're talking about like one of the absolute best kind of all time, to be honest. And
also I think that it's not just that South Africa play fewer test matches, their series are shorter. So you can't look at Rabada in the last few years and pick out a standout series. You know, when we debate about where various players rank historically, one of the first things you don't just look at their numbers, you recall individual series that live long in the memory. And because Rabada almost exclusively plays 2 test series now, he just doesn't have that luxury.
Yeah, and so if South Africa get to the World Championship final, they will have done it having played 6 two test match series, which, says something about that competition. But also, you can see that both ways. I mean, I guess for a fast bowler, it means you're getting a certain amount of rest, but also means you have to click into gear absolutely straight away. You don't get any time to sort of build into it to come back from a bad start in a series. You've got to just kind of click from the start. And yeah, it is a totally ridiculous record. And he's such a good bowler to watch when he's on form, and just everything works back. And also, I mean, this kind of doesn't matter, but like it's great that like he looks so good when he bats and never got a 50, right? It's one of the craziest records. I mean, a bit like we were talking about Tim Southey before, a guy who should have made so much more. That's almost kind of charming in its own way, I think.
Just to go over those numbers, 306 wickets at 21.77. Of bowlers with 300 test wickets, only Marshall, Ambrose, Truman and McGrath have lower averages. No one has a lower strike rate than his strike rate of 39.6 of the guys who've got 300 test wickets. He's probably going to end up with a record very similar to Dale Steyn. Steyn finished with 439 wickets at 22.95. Rabada averages less than 25 against every country other than New Zealand, who he averages 28 against. I think the only blot on his copybook really is being quiet in tests he's played in India. But it's a very, very similar overall record to the other standout quicks of his generation, Cummins and Bumrah, both of whom have played fewer test matches but are older than Rabada, which if you factor in how few test matches South Africa play at the moment, that's actually extraordinary.
Yeah, and that record in India as well. I think the first series he played there was on like
the Dust Bowl
total
series,
Dust Bowls, like the kind
the
of
most
like a
extreme
revenge
ones they've
series.
had. Yeah. And I guess I think of the current generation, those 3 are above the rest. I think each of them you can look at certain traits and say that's why they're the best of the 3, and that's an argument for another pod. I think looking back slightly further, for me, Steyn is above Rabada, especially if you're comparing 2 guys from the same country playing a lot of you can compare the conditions. Steyn did it in an era where batters dominated the test game, and Steyn was so far ahead of the rest.
He was almost the only guy to average under 30, and he was averaging like 22.
Yeah. And whereas Rabada is doing that in a generation where there are a couple of other guys who do that, whereas Steyn was so far ahead of the rest. On to Australia. David Warner is available for selection a year after retiring from Test cricket. Having seen the debate about who should replace him unfold, Warner has had his say, speaking to the Telegraph in Australia. He said, I'm always available. They've just got to pick up the phone. Honestly, if they really needed me for the series, I'm more than happy to play the next Shield game and go out and play. The Australian cricket journalist Peter Layla, in response to Warner's comments, said, I've had my head in my hands all morning. This is a drive-by shooting by a bloke in a clown car. Go away, David. We've had enough. Now is not your time. It's probably not going to be David Warner, as fun as that would be. Katya, who will open for Australia? Because this has been the one debate dominating Australia cricket for the last 6 months.
I mean, the whole point of David Warner saying that is he is still probably their best option, even though he is retired and now taking shots from the sidelines. They had Steve Smith opening in New Zealand, which was their last test match. Australia haven't actually played a test match since March earlier this year, so it's been a while. And apart from that last innings, Smith kind of struggled opening and said this week that he didn't request to move down the order, but he did tell the head coach that he would prefer to bat at 4, which apparently is not a request to move down the order. So he'll be batting back down at number 4. He also said apparently that Khawaja and Marnus Labuschagne hated him batting at opening, which kind of, his reasoning for that was that they felt safer with him batting at 4, which kind of speaks a lot to their internal psyche about needing that safety net.
To be fair, he does basically average 60 at 4.
Yeah.
I'd probably feel safer.
Yeah, that's also fair. So they've got this kind of hole at the top at the opening spot, and they don't, now that Cameron Green is injured and that creates space for Smith to move back down in the middle order, they don't have a natural opener or they don't have anyone in the middle order who they could push up to open apart from potentially Travis Head.
But the debate before, when Cam Green was fit, so last winter after Warner retired, they were like, Cam Green is the best batter not in the team. How do we get Cam Green in the team? Cam Green goes to 4, Smith opens. That's how they facilitated it. There was chat even before Green was injured that Smith didn't want to open anymore. So then there was chat, could it be Green? Could it be Head? Well, now that Green is injured, it looks like the middle order players will just bat in the spots they want to bat in, which means there's a question about who opens with Khawaja. And it's really not clear who it will be.
Yeah, no, it's really not clear. So the kind of two options that have done it before, albeit not actually that recently for Marcus Harris, but it is Marcus Harris and Matt Renshaw. Neither of them have got particularly good records in test matches opening the batting. There are still, I think, 3 more rounds in the Sheffield Shield before the first test match of the Border Gavaskar Trophy. So there's still time for them to completely stake their claim, or you go for a really young guy or a younger player who can completely bolt out of the blue. There's also Cameron Bancroft, who did really well in the Sheffield Shield last year. I think he was the second leading run scorer in the Shield last year. So there's a couple of different options, but Cameron Bancroft hasn't played Test cricket for Australia for a really long time. There's no one who's particularly stood out and staked their claim to that position as of yet. So yeah, those are the potential names floated about who could open batting. Is it Sam Constas who could?
Yeah, he's the young guy. So I guess
he's 19 though, right?
Yeah, so that's
just
the
turned
thing.
19.
Is you'd look at this kind of selection debate. You'd always look at 3 different kind of ways. You look at the kind of tried and tested guys, but they're out.
But they're not really tried and tested.
Well, that's
because
the thing.
they're tried and
discarded.
They're tested, and the test didn't go so well, I guess.
Well, I mean, Marcus Harris averages 25 in Test cricket. Cam Bancroft averages 26 in Test cricket. Yeah, there's a reason why Australia moved on from these guys.
Well, exactly, yeah. But so I guess you're looking at those guys. They might sort of grind it out for a bit, but you're not going to get loads. That's one way to look at it. The other way is, as Katya says, to pick a really young guy who you think is going to be good enough and say, right, sink or swim, and we might come back to you in a few years, or great, you're nailed on for 15. That would be Sam Constas, but he is so young. He's 19. I mean, he made 200s in that opening round, which is a big deal, but again, it's just so early. The other,
just on Constas is quite an interesting one, because normally I'd look at it and be like, that is absurd. He's just turned 19. He's had one good game, basically. One amazing game, granted. But he is, it's worth saying, he's regarded as a prodigy in a way that maybe one player every 10 years is regarded in Australia, right? People were talking, I think you were saying before we started recording, that people were talking about him as great talent before he even made his Shield debut last year.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And I guess, in a similar way, probably the last guy to come through they would talk about like this might have been Will Pukovski, who was obviously retired in those sad circumstances. So that's 2 of the ways to look at it. But then I think there's actually two other sort of categories you go for. One is you just pick the absolute form horse in the Sheffield Shield. We don't yet know who that will be, but there are a couple guys who might set their hands up. Or and this is part of the thing with Smith not opening actually, is that it's a question of tempo. Like if you're looking for a replacement for David Warner, maybe you want someone who can sort of take the attack to the opposition, who can sort of maybe hit the shine off the ball a bit as well, and so pick a white ball gun basically, and that can work in Australia. That's where you see some of these C-ball hit ball guys.
Warner, right?
Exactly, yeah. You look at Warner's record in Australia compared to everywhere else, and so that's where Josh Inglis is probably the main guy in that category, who's also had a decent start to the Sheffield Shield.
200s in the opening round.
Yeah, so he's not a red ball opener by trade, but he can strike it clean at the top of the order in white ball cricket. And if he comes off, a few times in a series, that can have quite a big impact overall. So that's the other thing they could look at, I think.
Yeah, the other name I'd throw in the mix, it could be that there's just someone who's not played international cricket yet, who's got decent red ball numbers, get to go. Maybe the most likely one of those guys is a guy called Nathan McSweeney. He's 25 years old, predominantly bats 3 or 4, but he captained Australia A more than a year ago. So he's someone they regard very highly in Australia, and it might be one of those things where you look at where's the gap in the side, and the way to get in a spare bat at the moment is the only place to do that is up top. But on your point in terms of they want to replace not just Warner, but Warner's intent with the bat. McSweeney has a career strike rate of 42, so they're not going to get that from him. But yeah, very, very interesting that we've got this super high profile series in like one of the key positions. No one seems has a clue as to who will open. That's it for part 3. In part 4, we'll hear about the technology that could revolutionize the recreational game. Something different now. We're joined by Arjun from Fulltrack AI, a company whose technology might just revolutionize the recreational game. Arjun, great to have you on. What is Fulltrack AI? What do you guys do?
Hey, yes, how you doing? Thanks for having me. We are a ball tracking and analytics provider. I think most people here would have heard of Hawkeye, Virtualize, sort of the professional elite providers of ball tracking technology at the elite game level. So that's sort of the international matches, ICC, IPL, 100, those sorts of games. But that technology, while it's incredibly expensive and incredibly hard to set up, sort of 6 cameras in the stadium, etc., the data that comes out of it that we see on TV, pitch maps, beehives, sort of speeds and swings and all of that stuff, it's super valuable to coaches, not just for matches, not just at the elite level, but all the way down to the grassroots level. So in the modern day where, a grassroots coach is picking up sort of video analysis and other digital means to improve their sort of infrastructure and their coaching techniques. And we realized that about 3 years ago. And we also realized that the mobile GPUs and sort of the infrastructure that mobile phones were developing in terms of their camera, in terms of the network connections, et cetera, was enabling us to start tracking and doing a lot of that stuff that's done at the elite level, down at the grassroots level at a cost that's about 1,000th that at the elite level. So Fulltrack essentially bridges that gap, democratizes analytics for cricketers all over the globe. At this moment, we have over 1 million downloads of the app. We were the #1 sports app in India in July. And essentially that's who we are. And we're looking forward to obviously taking this journey to hundreds of millions of people around the globe.
So how do you foresee it being used in recreational cricket? Is it for coaches to sort of look at data trends in individual players in a way that previously was completely impossible? Is it something that down the line could be used for something like DRS in a club game, for example? Is that something that you think is possible?
Absolutely. So great questions. What's important to understand about us is that we have a core set of technologies that at a very high level track a moving cricket ball at a very high degree of accuracy for sort of the setup and infrastructure that we're using, which is just a mobile phone. We actually have a bunch of products that already include DRS for grassroots matches, just tracking and analytics for grassroots matches. And when I say grassroots, those same technologies are actually now beginning to be piloted with our sort of professional partners, which includes Cricket South Africa, which includes a number of other county and domestic boards. But so we have those two match products. And then our most commonly used product, because it was launched 2 or 3 years ago, is actually our training product. So that is very much the coaching settings, schools, academies, clubs, junior sections. They're adopting Fulltrack rapidly. We have thousands of customers across the globe who pay us money to access that technology to get the speeds and the swings and the pitch maps. And actually, very importantly, also what we call smart video. So when you film like a 2-hour session, you're usually setting up your phone for 2 hours. And that's 2 hours of data, that's 2 hours of video, that's 2 hours of storage on your phone, that's 2 hours of battery life that you're losing. And that's terrible. But what Fulltrack does is it automatically detects a bowling action or a sidearm throw, and it clips that down to ball by ball highlights. So your 2-hour session is actually 10 minutes on our app. It's stored in the cloud, not taking any of your memory. And so essentially, to answer your question, all of those things. We have a grassroots league in Dubai called the Dubai Desert Super League. And, they do 600 matches a year, and we're their ball tracking partner. And we're working with them on almost every game to provide live DRS turned around in a minute. It's making umpiring fair. It's making things more exciting. The players absolutely love it because they're getting what they usually see on TV. And we actually have numerous other leagues across the world that have already been onboarded into this DRS product that was launched a few months ago.
So I understand how the training stuff works. You just put your phone on you put your camera phone on, etc., and you record it. Use the app. How does it work with DRS? Do the umpires have a camera on them? And then I guess if that is the case, how does it work? Because obviously umpires move. So how does it manage to provide accurate tracking data for the decisions that it makes?
Absolutely. So essentially, we started out as a coaching and training software that augmented coaching and training. And that works from a tripod placed roughly where the umpire would stand. But that's usually used in net sessions, open nets, whatever that is. And there is no umpire. That enables us to have a stable camera feed from the phone camera. And, we have pretty advanced, now patented technologies sort of globally that are running on that. Before we could get into matches, we had to find a way to get a stable camera stream for a match without putting a tripod up, because obviously that's not going to work for a match setting. What we built, and all of our R&D is done out of Harvard and MIT. We're a team founded by Harvard and MIT computer scientists, and we're developing these technologies actively. Essentially, what we managed to end up building was stabilization algorithms that actually allow an umpire to just put the same phone in a little pocket, and we customize that pocket is just in the middle of the chest. You put the phone in, and from that sort of moving stream, the umpire moves around as usual. So when I talk about Desert Super League in Dubai, Brampton Cricket League in North America, Shoria Sports in India, and numerous other leagues, Hoysala Super League in Texas, all of these leagues are already using this technology. The umpires go about as they usually do, doing their job. And from that moving camera, using a variety of different stabilization techniques and other algorithms, we actually run all the same technology that we do in the coaching setting, and with the addition of DRS. So hopefully, when you put this video out, you can maybe add some of those visuals and graphics just to make this more obvious. But that whole thing where you see pitching in line, impact in line, wickets hitting, all of that, we do all of that from that little phone in the umpire's chest.
You mentioned earlier that millions of people have already downloaded it. Why do you think it's been this popular?
This idea of DRS, and thank you obviously to the international bodies that brought it to the fore in, I think, 2010-ish. This idea of DRS is propagated sort of across all cricket. It's not just something that makes the game fair. It is something that makes the game very exciting. When that moment sort of the bowler or the captain, doing that whole DRS signal, and then the wait, that minute's wait or that minute and a half's wait that comes with it, it gets the fans, the players, the teams, everybody super excited. So the idea of DRS and ball tracking is associated with these very exciting and engaging moments. And I think being sort of the democratization of that technology really helps, because this is talked about by the likes of, Nasser Hussain, VVS Lakshman, all of these sort of well-known names are talking about this on the biggest of platforms. And we are now that technology for the grassroots. We're by far sort of the leading technology. That just helps a lot with regards to what we're doing. Now, why we have managed to succeed in that domain while others haven't, and there has been a bunch of other apps that have tried and failed, is because thankfully, thanks to our research team in the US, we've been able to build something that is incredibly accurate. There's actually now PhD papers out there about sort of that we didn't know about that were recently released that sort of validate Fulltrack's accuracy. And we are used by essentially all the largest and most successful national teams in the world. So that includes sort of the likes of England Cricket Board, Rajasthan Royals, Cricket South Africa, lots and lots of, we have over 30 professional teams from county, domestic, and other sort of infrastructures that are using Fulltrack. And that really helps, when they're using it, they validate the accuracy, they find it very useful. It's much easier to propagate down to the people that aspire to play cricket at that level.
And I guess what's interesting as well is that, this technology is available for people, like me who play recreational cricket, and the very same technology is being used from a coaching point of view for international cricket. And then, everyone who's ever played recreational cricket has wanted something like DRS in the game for a very long time. A lot of arguments that you have on the field are because, the umpire, you might not have a neutral umpire, etc. The accusations of bias. And if you have one of these in, suddenly it all goes out the window.
It's interesting you mentioned sort of what recreational cricketers look for. I myself, now a third grade recreational cricketer, myself and one of my co-founders, the reason we started the company was actually related to something you're talking about. And that is, so we were at Harvard Cricket Club. This guy was 3 years senior to me. His name's Vivek Jayaram. He's a PhD currently at University of Washington, went to Harvard with me, undergrad, studied computer science, and we ran the club. He first and then passed it on to me. But a constant argument between us was who bowls faster. And when we bowl faster, we're competing sort of 100 kilometers an hour or 105. We're not saying faster as in who's bowling 130. And sort of the app now approves that, but back in the day, as recreational cricketers, we all think we're bowling 120. We all think we're bowling 130. And then you actually measure with a speed gun or Fulltrack and you're like, wow, I had no idea. And so there's always this argument. There's one element where we were competing against each other, who's faster, but we thought, okay, maybe I'll be 120, he'll be 115. But really what you learn is I'm like 105 and he's right about there too. So those sorts of arguments on the recreational side allow for the app to be very engaging. Now on the performance side, when I say sort of school cricketers and pathway and age group cricketers, they actually use this data to improve. So they're probably working with a coach. They are working with a coach who's then saying, okay, this is the mechanics you want to change. Same thing with a batter. They never had access to sort of the smart video that we're talking about. We also have a feature that allows them to say, I just want to see the good length balls moving away, and all of them in like a 2-hour session that a batter faced. And that makes it very easy for a batting coach or a parent to go in and say, okay, this is what you're doing wrong. This is where your head is falling over and those sorts of things. So these people are actually using it for performance. As recreational cricketers, it's more the engagement side of things where, it's super exciting to have DRS, super exciting to have speeds and things like that.
Yeah, I think the speed gun could be quite humbling for a lot of recreational cricketers. No, I think it's absolutely fascinating. I think from a coaching point of view, so I play for quite a small club and we don't have a full-time coach. So you can almost self-coach yourself, right? Because you have the footage of what you're doing. You can have a better picture. Obviously, you can't watch yourself bowl. You can't watch yourself bat. But with this technology, not only can you do that, but you can also see, well, hang on, I'm not able to swing the ball away as much as I can. And you might then tweak your action a little bit. And then you see, okay, maybe is it swinging more when I, move my front arm over a little bit? I think it's absolutely fascinating. Well, Arjun, it's been brilliant talking to you. I'm very excited by Fulltrack AI. I think I'm going to make sure that my club gets involved ahead of next summer. Thanks so much for joining the show.
Thanks a lot. Yes, pleasure.
That is it for today's show.
Can I do an Africa qualifier update very quickly?
Please do.
So the Gambia we talked about last week, none of them could get their visas in time, so they had to forfeit their first couple of games. Which was a shame. Their visa turned up just in time for them to play Zimbabwe, who have put on a world record 344 in that game.
So 344 in a
T20 game. Yes.
How have Sikandar Raza and Blessing Muzarabani gone?
So I think Blessing Muzarabani is about to bowl. So I mean, maybe next week we'll be talking about Zimbabwe's record win, or the Gambia's record chase. Who knows? Gambia at 36 for 4 at the time of recording. Zimbabwe had 133 or 43 from Sikandaras, 7 fours and just the 15 sixes
Not
in
bad.
that. So yeah,
Not bad. Well, cheers for the update. If you want to hear about how Gambia got on in the run chase, tune into next week's show. That is everything for today's show. We'll be back on the Patreon tomorrow afternoon after the first day's play in Rawalpindi, and we'll be back next week with our 2 usual weekly episodes.